Hey channel, Fernando from SkyFi Audio. Here we have the McIntosh MSA5500, which is a streaming integrated amplifier and the first one that McIntosh has ever produced. While McIntosh has been making superb integrated amplifiers for decades, this is the first time that they step into the streaming integrated segment, which is growing super quickly. We're seeing a lot of really good one-box solutions that does everything for a system. You know, amplification, preamplification, ability to connect to phono section, a good DAC, and streaming. And that's what we've got here, everything in one box. Now, it's not for everybody, but in this video, we're going to see if you're the right audience for it. We're going to go over the menu system and how to configure one of these. We're going to look at the back side of it and what kind of connections we have available for us. And then we're going to go deep into the streaming portion of it. Now, it's not easy to do a streamer. It takes a lot of coordination of all the streaming companies. It's a bit of a heavy lift, and that's why not everybody has a streaming integrated amplifiers. For instance, that means that the engineers at McIntosh had to interact and interface and get approval from all the different streaming companies like Spotify and Tidal. And those are always changing. Now, McIntosh has done a super job with it, and I really feel they've nailed it. It has just the right amount of streaming capabilities that I would be looking for without having things in it that are going to make it obsolete. Now, it's built on top of an existing product, the MA5300, which is their integrated amplifier. So it's the exact same chassis, same preamp and amplification section, same DAC, sort of, and I'll go more into that later. But with the streaming capabilities. So this review could be really viewed by someone looking at either the MSA5500 or the MA5300, which is an integrated amplifier. Now, it's rated at 100 watts into 8 ohms. And if you go down to a 4 ohm load, it steps up to 160 watts, which is enough to drive most speakers, except for maybe some of the least efficient ones. So really anything in the high 80s, low 90s, this will do a wonderful job of driving. It also has a connection in the back that will allow you to expand this in case you ever do need a little bit more power for amplification. You just remove a couple of pins and turns this unit into a preamplifier or a streaming preamplifier. So you've got a really nice upgrade path available for you down the road. A little bit later in the video, I'm also going to show you how to connect this to the network, which is one of the trickier things to do with streaming amplifiers. I'm also going to focus on the two most popular streaming platforms, which is Tidal and Spotify. And McIntosh has done something which is what I was hoping for. They've actually provided connections through Tidal Connect and Spotify Connect, which means that you're able to use your iPhone or your telephone to control the app, the native Spotify or Tidal app, and essentially command your unit to stream via the network. So you're not necessarily using an app that is built and supported by McIntosh. You get to use the greatness of both the Spotify and the Tidal apps, which are far superior than what a manufacturer of electronics could ever cook on their own. Now, that's a super important concept to understand. So you're using the native app in Spotify to queue up the song that you want to play. And both this device and your iPhone are on the same network, so they're sort of talking to each other. So once you queue up your song and hit play, you're able to essentially tell the McIntosh integrated amp to go to the internet and fetch that song. So the connection and the streaming of the music isn't necessarily happening between your phone and the unit. It's actually happening between the unit and the Spotify server out on the internet. And that's an important distinction, especially when you compare it to Bluetooth or AirPlay. Those require you to stream from your phone to the unit so that any interruption in Wi-Fi or distance limitation or anything else you do with your phone interferes with that streaming of music. So just imagine you've got some friends over, you've got your phone, you're AirPlaying to this unit, which has capabilities, of course. It does do AirPlay and Bluetooth. You're streaming to this unit and suddenly your phone rings and all the music stops and the party stops. And sometimes it even will ring over the loudspeakers, which is a bit of an inconvenience. That's why I'm thrilled about having both Spotify Connect and Tidal Connect. It also allows you to utilize the full resolution of Spotify and Tidal. So you're not relying on a communication between your phone and the device, but rather connecting to a Spotify or Tidal server remotely and getting the full bit rate. Now, at $8,000 MSRP, that is a hefty price tag. I realize that. But if you were to put this together in separates, you'd certainly come close or exceed that pretty quickly, at this level at least. So you are getting, a legendary preamplifier from McIntosh, so the preamplifier section using solid-state devices. You're getting a 100-watt amplifier. You're getting a DAC with all sorts of capabilities and inputs and outputs, optical, coax, HDMI to connect your television. And then you're getting the streaming services that we're covering in this video. A few things to note about this video. I'm going to put chapters below, so if you want to skip certain sections, just use the slider bar below to skip forward. For example, when I go a bit later into configuring the network, unless you've got one of these units, that's a bit boring, so just skip ahead. Now, as you can imagine, we are a McIntosh dealer, and we'd love to earn your business. We realize that you have lots of options as to where to purchase this from, but if you're in the local area, we are located in New Jersey, and you're within reach of our store, we'd really appreciate a chance to earn your business and provide this or any other McIntosh product for you. I'd also appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to the video and possibly even leave a comment. And if you want to see this piece or anything else from Technics, McIntosh, Klipsch, I'd encourage you to reach out to us, make an appointment, and visit our showroom in Glen Rock, New Jersey. It's quite a spectacular place if you're into hi-fi. Now let's talk a bit about the capabilities. So we've mentioned before it has the ability to do connect. So that includes, that's actually referred to as casting. So that includes Spotify, Tidal, AirPlay, Apple, Bluetooth, Google Cast, and it is in fact Roon ready if you've got a Roon endpoint. Digital inputs, quite a bit of them. We've got an optical, coaxial, MCT to connect an external CD player from McIntosh, and USB to connect to a computer, and it is able to decode both DSD and PCM. And process signals up to 192K and 24-bit resolution, so that's really state-of-the-art. The USB input is capable of also processing 192.32 and DSD 512 digital signals. In addition, we've got a phono section built in. Now be careful here because the phono section does not do moving coil. It is designated for moving magnet only. So you'd have to use a moving magnet or a high output moving coil with this unit. Otherwise, you'd require some other external interface. Digital section is quad balanced, so it's an 8-channel 32-bit digital to analog converter. Now the HDMI port on the back is pretty tricky. It's got the ability to connect to television. This is a really nice feature if you've got a setup like this where you want to pipe your TV information through your speakers, but you don't want the complexity of all these remotes and having to manage extra devices. So the HDMI connection is ARC capable, so you can control both from one remote, and they're sort of aware of each other so that when you turn on your television, your integrator will turn on and vice versa. So it makes it super convenient. It has legendary McIntosh power guard, which prevents this amplifier from clipping and also helps protect your loudspeakers. That's in just about every McIntosh amplifier made, and it's something that they're able to do through 60, 70 years of development. It also has Sentry monitoring and thermal protection in case it overheats. Now, build quality and fit and finish is exemplary McIntosh. This is about as nice as it gets in the industry. They use pretty heavy gauge steel wherever possible, external heat sinks. The glass is what you'd expect from this level of piece, and especially in this price range, you got the aluminum end caps. And overall, the fit and finish is just superb. Now, it's a step down from some of the flagship products from McIntosh. If you go up the food chain, you'll get some handles here, a thicker glass. You might get a high polished stainless steel chassis, but in this price range compared to the competition, this is absolutely top notch. And the two absolute favorite McIntosh features are the glass front faceplate. Now, while glass is a bit more delicate, there's a great reason for it. All the writing is behind the glass itself. So no matter how many times you touch it or use it or press a button, it's not going to fade or deteriorate over time. This piece will look brand new 20, 30 years from now if you take good care of it. And also featuring the quintessential Mac meters. Absolutely love them. These particular ones are recording between 0 and 100 for the top scale, for 100 watts at 8 ohms, and 0 to 200 on the bottom scale if you're using the 4 ohm tap. Also, the glass is backlit. I'm not sure if you can tell in this lighting, but this entire section here is backlit. The headphone and standby is also backlit. Now, this display here is a vacuum fluorescent display. Now, we service a lot of equipment at SkyFi Audio, especially the vintage stuff that we sell. And we do find that if this is left on indefinitely, it will fade over time or get a little blotchy. So I do recommend that you keep this at the 75% brightness mark. And when you're not using the amplifier, obviously shut it off. That'll really extend the life of the fluorescent display. If you want the glass faceplate and the meters, this is the entry point for McIntosh. Well, this and its sibling, the MA5300. And as mentioned, they're almost the exact same unit. The 5300 has the same amplifier and preamplifier section and DAC. The DAC is a removable card and does not have the streaming functionality. So I sort of consider at least the review of this piece and its associated menus to be almost exactly the same between the two units, omitting the streaming functionality, obviously. All right, now let's take this over to the bench and take a closer look at the menu system, the back, and how you program it. On the left side, we've got our input selector, which is a rotary encoder, and on the right side, we've got our volume in percentage. A quick push of the volume control takes you in and out of mute, while a quick push of the input selector takes you into what's called trim, while a long push and hold will get you into the setup menu, which I'll cover later. I'm going to just get out of it now. Going back to the trim, we've got brightness setting. This is for the display itself. I like to leave it about 3/4 of the way so we don't prematurely burn out the display over the years. Then we've got meter lights. This lets you turn on and off the meters. Pretty cool. Then we've got a mono stereo. You see we're underlining whether it's mono or stereo. Then we've got the tone controls. Now, right now they are set to off. We're able to turn them on. And then we've got control of the bass in positive and negative. I think it goes up to 12. And then another turn gets us into treble. And then we've got input trim. Now input trim is specific for this input that we're in. It allows you to essentially level match with other inputs. So let's say you've got a phono section that has a lower output than the, let's say, the digital input. This lets you sort of even out the volume. So as you sort of go through the different inputs, you don't have a big discrepancy in volume. All right, back into the trims, and we've got our balance here, left and right. So a long press and hold will get you into the setup menu, and this is divided into system, digital, network, inputs, data ports, external control, and then exit. So once again, I'm going to go into it. So under system, we've got our firmware version. That's the software we're on. Whether we're using the pass-through, this is a home theater pass-through function. This is a pretty cool way to integrate an integrated amp into a home theater setup. Our startup volume, this is so that you don't blast the system inadvertently. Auto off, this is a really annoying feature. You're going to want to turn this off immediately. This turns off the unit by itself if you forget to turn it off, but sometimes it can be a bit annoying, so I suggest that set to disabled. And same for the power save. This is nice if you kind of get lost, or if you move the system to another room and you kind of want to reset it. You can do a factory default here for both the settings or the full factory. And that's it. So let me get back out so that we know where we are. All right, so that was the first of the many setup menus. I'm going to go back into it. So that was system, and now we're going to do digital. Digital gives you the version of the module, the digital module. Here we've got 4.14. And it is a DS1 module. Right now, their McIntosh systems are available both in DS1 and DS2. Update. This is to, I believe, to update the software in it. This is setting the gain for each of the digital inputs in dBs. Lip sync is to coordinate the playback with your television to make sure that they're timed correctly. CEC power enable, this is to have power control, I think, for the HDMI connections. And same for the volume. If you use a HDMI cable, you're able to universally control both. All right, and return gets us back out. So that was the digital menu. Go into the network menu. This gets you into the connection type. Right now our network is disconnected. Our IP address is 0.0.0.0. I'll go more in depth in this later when I show you how to connect this thing to the internet. And the MAC address, that's how it's identified on the network. Next is the input menu. If we go in there, this allows you to essentially rename your inputs and also make them disappear completely, which is really nice. If you share this piece with someone else in your household, eliminating all the inputs that are not used makes this piece a lot easier and understandable. So I recommend you go through the trouble of doing that. So here you're able to essentially delete inputs and also rename them as you see fit. Data ports allows you to configure the ports that are in the back of the unit to talk to other McIntosh equipment. External control, let's go in there. Let's just enable the front infrared control and choose the type of IR codes and the speed of the RS-232 port. This is pretty sophisticated stuff you're probably not going to want to deal with. And that's it. The last setup menu is exit to get you back to the starting point. I didn't mention, but also we've got a headphone jack in the front using HDX protocol, and obviously the standby button, which is a momentary push. The back of the unit is almost identical to the MA5300. The biggest difference is the way the digital section is configured. This is built into the unit, while on the 5300 it is a removable, upgradable card. There's a lot happening here, but hopefully I can help distill it a bit. This is our speaker connections. Unlike a lot of other Mac equipment, there's only a single tap, and it can be 4 or 8 ohms. There's no settings necessary, plus at the top, negative at the bottom. And these are 5-way binding posts, so they can accept either a spade, a bare wire, or a banana through this point here. This entire section here is the digital section for both inputs. Actually, they're all inputs. We've got 2 coax cables, digital coax. We've got a Wi-Fi antenna, which comes in a bag with a power cord, so you'll want to connect that up. We have an HDMI ARC cable that allows you to connect your television and control both volume and power state through a single remote. This is super handy. It can be a little tricky to set up. You have to go into a few menus at your television to enable and disable some of the power settings and the data settings, but if you put a little effort, this can be a super handy feature. Here we have our network connection, which we will need to utilize later to connect this thing to the network, or at least to connect the Wi-Fi. We've got a USB audio. This is to connect to a computer. MCT is a proprietary connection from McIntosh that allows you to connect CD transport directly to this unit at a very high speed and a good bit rate. And then we've got 2 optical inputs. So 2 coax, 2 optical, and then USB and HDMI are the full complement. Moving to the top right side of the unit, we've got a service port for updates. These are factory updates. There are some software upgrades that are available over the internet, and this is not the right port for that. So this is not a consumer port. All right, we've got 2 data ports. This is to connect other devices from McIntosh using a 1/8 inch cable that allows them to kind of intelligently communicate with each other. That would be a CD player, external amplifier, streamer. Well, actually, you already have a streamer in here, but on the 5300, that would be a streamer. All right, external control. This is an external infrared transmitter. This lets you sort of blast infrared without while the unit is inside of a cabinet, for example. And RS-232 lets you control this unit from a control system. Power and control lets you input and output to turn on the power automatically of other McIntosh devices. So let's say you were going to use an external amplifier. You were able to connect an 1/8 inch cable here and control the power state of that amplifier. We've got a second Wi-Fi antenna, and this is our 4 and 8 ohm taps for the other channel, left side. The bottom section is where all our analog stuff happens. So if you see McIntosh devise things in a logical sense, we've got all our digital noisy stuff up top in a separate little box, and below we've got our analog section. So starting at the left, we've got our subwoofer output. This is a true subwoofer output, welcome sight. And then we've got our preamp inputs and outputs. So this essentially joins the preamp and the amplifier section internally into a single integrated amplifier. If you were to, for example, connect an external amplifier, you would remove these guys and utilize this as just a preamp. So this is a really nice expansion port. We've got 4 sets of analog RCA inputs, single-ended. Pretty simple. And remember, these are configurable from the front. You can kind of name them anything you want. Here we've got a grounding lug that goes with our moving magnet phono input. So you can use a standard moving magnet cartridge, or you could use a high output moving coil cartridge as well. And then a single set of balanced XLR inputs. This would be for your highest quality source, maybe a CD player or some other external device using XLR. So pretty simple stuff. Oh, I forgot to mention the IC removable power cord with a matching fuse on the other side. The remote is a standard HR85. A really nice slim remote, very high quality piece, and it allows you to do a bunch of different things. For example, it has some transport controls for controlling CD players, and you can actually control the streaming section as well from down here. We've got all the menus here. And some people might find the remote a little bit more intuitive than using the menu system as I showed you by the front panel. And also, if you look at the manual, you can find a way to reprogram this remote so that it can control your television, cable box, or any auxiliary device. So it is a sort of a universal remote. Oh, and of course the most important things are down here. We've got our volume control and our input selection. In terms of setup, the most complicated thing you will do on this piece is possibly connected to the internet. So I'm going to dive a little deeper than usual in that particular section. So we're going to need one of these. This is a category 5 or 6 network cable, or considered an Ethernet cable. You're going to have to find one of these connections. It's likely to plug into your home router, whether it's your cable company or Verizon, whoever you have. You've got a router somewhere with a port like this. So you're going to have to connect it to the network port in the back of this. Before we're able to use Wi-Fi, it has to be a wired connection according to the manual. Now that might change down the road. There are ways of doing this without a wired connection. But as of now, by looking at the manual, this is how we've got to do it. Next is to simply turn the unit on, and we're going to go into the networking menu. You'll notice this NET light, network light, is already green. That means it's already seen the network. So we should be able to do a quick push and hold and go into a network. We're on wired connection right now, and it's received an IP address, which is great, 10.0.0.171. So now we've got to go get either an iPad, an iPhone, or a laptop that's on the same Wi-Fi network that you want to get on. So now we need to open a network browser or internet browser. So it could be just about anything that's out there. You're going to go into the address field up top, zero it out, and type in the address 10.0.0.171, and that should bring up the menu system for this amplifier. And in here we're going to find a pretty simple menu system. We've got settings, overview, and update. Here you could rename the unit to appear on your network under a custom name. But under settings, we've got the ability to change our network type from automatic to wireless. So if you select wireless, you find your network here, and then you type in your Wi-Fi password. You should be able to then disconnect the cable from the back and be up and running on Wi-Fi from your final destination. Now keep in mind, the easiest way to connect this to your network router is to physically move the amplifier to your network router and just plug it directly in there with a category 5 cable. And then once you've got it up and running on Wi-Fi, then I recommend you go to your final resting location. Another important field will be this update tab here. Now McIntosh will issue different firmware revisions on this unit over the years, addressing both bugs and fixes and improvements. So this would be a good thing to remember how to access down the road if needed. Under overview, as I said, you've got the ability to rename things, and then you've got a bunch of information, including all the firmware versions, which may be helpful if you're ever troubleshooting with tech support. Going back to settings and looking a little deeper, our volume for startup can be set here. We can disable the power save here as well. And the rest was the network stuff we already covered. One thing that did trip me as I was setting the wireless was that after you choose network type, you do need to hit apply here. So you enter the password, you enter your network, your password, and you hit apply. All right, the next tip is pretty critical, and this will hang you up if you don't catch it. I have not removed the network cable from the unit, and it did not immediately find the Wi-Fi network. I had to do essentially a power reset, and not through the front panel, but I had to pull the power cord and put it back on. Once I did that, I saw the network flash for a little bit, and it came up on Wi-Fi under a new address. Now you'll notice it's 172. So now the unit is not connected. I changed my browser address to 172 just to confirm, and I'm able to access the menu. So now this laptop is essentially connected to the streamer through Wi-Fi. And sure enough, if I go into the network settings, now I can see that my type is now a wireless connection. 172 is the address, and the MAC address should have not changed. Let's test out our streaming capabilities, and we're going to do that using network as our input. So I'm going to launch Tidal. I've got Tidal right here. I'm going to play just about any song. And the way you connect this thing is through this button up here. That brings up a sort of our sharing menu. And our first option is, in fact, AirPlay, and that's not what we want to do. We don't want to use AirPlay or Bluetooth. We want to do essentially Tidal Connect, which is the superior format for this. So by pressing that alone, you'll notice that this just changed over to Tidal for me. And now if I press play, instead of coming out of the speaker on my phone, it should come out of the actual amplifier, and it has. I don't have speakers connected, but you can see the meters are moving. That is a good sign. So if I can now scroll through different music, and this will remain on Tidal input. I did notice a nice little trick is that if I use the remote and I push the fast forward button, it will go to the next song, which is kind of cool. So you can put your phone away at that point if you want to scroll through the music. So again, I'm going to use the fast forward here, and we see the song advance and music playing. So let's talk about the pros and the cons of this integrated amplifier. On the pro side, simplicity. Having a single box solution for a setup like this, for example. This is a family room. I've got a turntable, just the integrated amplifier and a pair of speakers, and that's pretty much all I'm going to need in here. So simplicity, ease of use, having a large display in the front, and being able to program or configure the thing through the front panel, that's a huge plus for me. I could get up and running in probably around 30 minutes with what I know at this point. The looks. There's really nothing better looking in the world of hi-fi than a piece from McIntosh with the blue meters. They're legendary. I absolutely love the look. I like to know when there's music playing, so I love the visual feedback. And it's just a really traditional look, and it will integrate well with other pieces from McIntosh, despite what era they come from. And lastly, reliability. We've sold hundreds and hundreds of McIntosh pieces over the years from our shop in New Jersey, and it is remarkable how reliable all the amps and preamps are. Now, we've had enough years in business to know and see extremely low failure rates. And things that you take for granted. You know, for example, in an amplifier, one of the most common failures is when someone inadvertently shorts the outputs of the speakers. On a lot of brands, that means a visit to the clinic for an extensive repair. With McIntosh, with the built-in safeguards that they've got in every amplifier, they've sort of engineered them to make sure they don't come back. They don't want to see another piece, even if you make a mistake. So the power guard and the Sentry monitoring just keeps this unit, you know, operational even if you make a mistake. And even the thermal protection, it's got sensors in it that notice or measure the temperature over time, and if it reaches a critical point, it'll essentially just shut the unit down for you, allow it to cool off, and then let you get back into it without having to replace fuses or anything like that. On the negative side, I did notice a few things, and I realized that you can't have everything in every product. So for example, its inability to do a moving coil cartridge. A lot of my favorite cartridges are moving coil. I realized it wouldn't take a lot of pieces or components or extra engineering to put moving coil into this unit, but you know, they need to differentiate the different product lines. So I understand why it's not in there. Now you can do a high output moving coil, so that's a really nice alternative, but it would have been nice to have been able to do that. It's not until you get to the higher levels, maybe an MA8950, that you see moving coil support in their integrated line. Secondly, You notice the Spotify label here, which tells you the streaming service that's playing, but it would have been nice if it also gave me the name of the track. Not critical, because you generally have the phone in front of you, but sometimes if you're walking around and you want to see what's playing, it's nice to be able to glance over to the unit to see. And lastly, the way it was connected to the internet, it's a bit cumbersome. I suspect that will be improved over new revisions. But right now you do need, or at least this piece requires, a physical network connection. Now I will detail that, don't fear, it's not that hard, but it does require a bit of an extra step. One last thing that I'm not thrilled about, but again I super understand why it has to be this way, is that the DAC, the digital to analog conversion module, is not removable. A few years ago, McIntosh finally transitioned all their products to have removable digital to analog converters. And the reason for that is that those chipsets sort of evolve over time, they improve. So it was sort of like a really nice path to avoid it being obsolete. On this particular piece, they've had to go back to a permanent DAC board, and that is because of all the streaming services. To get certified from all these companies is a huge, heavy lift. And a lot of those certifications require that your product doesn't physically change, right? They're essentially certifying for this box and this box only. So having a removable card in it keeps you from being able to get those certifications. So we had to give that up in order to get the streaming services. I totally understand, but it would have been nice if it was upgradable. Now keep in mind that since this unit is in fact connected to the internet, it will receive updates over time. So at least in terms of the streaming services and its capabilities, those will evolve over the next couple of years and continue to improve, perhaps adding a few more streaming services through the Connect method rather than through AirPlay or Bluetooth. Now, I doubt that we will see integrated streaming built into all the McIntosh integrated amplifiers, maybe a couple of more at the lower level, but I doubt that they will go through the trouble of integrating into the bigger pieces like the 8950 or the MA12000. Coincidentally, just a few days ago, they released the DS200, which is a digital streamer or a DAC streamer. Essentially, the streaming portion of this piece is now available in its own box, and I'll picture it above. I've got a video coming as soon as I get my hands on one, but if you have a higher end McIntosh integrated amplifier, that might be the perfect addition for streaming, and it's very similar from what I looked at in terms of its capabilities. It does do Spotify Connect and Tidal Connect, and it is very similar in its software and menus, etc., etc. So I'm super excited to share that with you. If you want a single piece solution, this is it. If you want to maybe go for a more powerful integrated amplifier, you can add the 200 that just came out. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this short video. Again, please do like and subscribe and leave a comment below to help the channel. And of course, SkyFiAudio.com is our website. I'd love for you to visit or visit us online in case you'd like to purchase something. Fernando from SkyFi Audio, thanks for watching.